the first few verses from each one of them, so it's similar and distinct. And so I'll need 3 volunteers, one from Canada, one from the Southern Diocese, and one from the East will save the West for the hard stuff. So I can pick on them more. And then I want you, when you're reading, I know it's not visible for everyone, especially in the back, but when we're reading, I want to ask you afterwards the characteristics, what the setting, to describe the setting. There are some things that are emphasized in all 3, and that's how we're going to begin. So I think the Canadians are sitting here. Are they in the back? Where did they go? Did they leave because of the poverty?
I just want to say that I'm from Canada, but I'm from DC. Okay, I need glasses.
Okay, just the Matthew one.
Immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side, while he sent the multitudes away. And when he had sent the multitudes away, he went up on the mountain by himself to pray. Now when evening came, he was alone there, but the boat was now in the middle of the sea, tossed by the waves, for the wind was contrary. Now in the 4th watch of the night, Jesus went to them, walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, "It is a ghost," and they cried out for fear.
Southern Diocese.
Immediately he made his disciples get into the boat and go before him to the other side to Bethsaida, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent them away, he departed to the mountain to pray. Now when evening came, the boat was in the middle of the sea, and he was alone on the land. Then he saw them straining at rowing, for the wind was against them. Now about the 4th watch of the night he came to them, walking on the sea, and would have passed them by.
Very good, thank you. So you're watching for the descriptions, right? To describe the setting for us. East Coast, either area. It's only big. What? The West is coming.
Now when evening came, his disciples went down to the sea, got into the boat, and went over toward Capernaum. And it was already dark, and Jesus had not come to them. Then the sea arose because a great wind was blowing. So when they had rowed about 3 or 4 miles, they saw Jesus walking on the sea and drawing near the boat, and they were afraid.
Thank you very much. Now, someone from the West can start describing for me what are some of the characteristics that you see. What is this setting? What is important? Yes.
I think the icon kind of describes it all. It's really dark. The wind is blowing. It's in a boat in the middle of the sea. And
Just one other thing.
oh,
So
sorry.
you told us the first one that it's very dark. And it's important because if they could see, they know where they're going. So it wasn't 3 or 4 miles away. It was actually a very short distance. But they rowed, and who tells us that it's 3 or 4 miles? St. John, because he was rowing, it's probably very hot. And you want to say it was a long journey for you to get here, some of you, very long, and it was difficult. So he's saying, you know, I'm sure there's some anxiety there, some difficulty there. What else is there? This is West. Is this West? What else? Desolate, lonely. Why? What's the hardest part of the loneliness? It's in the beginning. Where you see here that in verse 17 in John, he says, and Jesus had not come to them. In Mark, what does he start with? He said, Jesus made them get into the boat. But basically, they wanted to be with him all the time. He said, no, you are going. You have to. Why? Because this difficulty, I need you to experience when you feel alone, neglected, abandoned, separated from me. Although you're not separated, this is a trial that I need you to go through. What was the time before this? Where were they? No, yes, right before this, excellent, they were. But there was another story that happened before this when Christ was asleep in the boat. So they panicked and they went down and they said, what are you doing sleeping? Don't you care? We're perishing, save us. And he did. He calmed the winds and they said, who is this? But this time he said, okay, no, I need it to be a little bit more challenging for you. What other descriptions? I missed the Midwest. What other descriptions? They're afraid. And it's mentioned several times, twice in Matthew, once in St. John, that they were afraid. And again, God, many times, even when he appears after his resurrection, he has to cast out fear. Because that's the sign of love. And there's not much that we can grow or learn when we're afraid. But with the darkness, nobody was afraid when you're young, right? And you sleep alone. This is part of the human experience. And before there was sin, there was no fear. But part of the sin in our life is that it causes fear, or it's a challenge, because we don't know what's coming next. What else is there? There's confusion. There's silence. There's uncertainty. What else? There's hope. And their hope is for Christ to come. That's why, actually, St. Mark says something that's kind of a little confusing. That's why I ended it there. What did he say? And he would have passed them by. Like Christ was walking on the sea, and he was going to go further from them, but he saw them. They were crying out. No, come here. Yes?
Mark's passage says he saw them straining at rowing, so he was watching them the whole time.
Exactly. And even many times, because God is watching us in our struggle, not because he likes to see us suffer, but he wants to see us victorious. And this is part of our life, our Christian life, that God is watching us, but he's also coming to us. What time is it? Not right now. Not right now. What time is this? It's okay. Is this Canada? I love Canada. I promise. They're going to complain about the meal and it's going to be my fault. What time did this happen? Fourth watch. Go to the next one. In the next one. Okay. The next, it was in the fourth watch of the night. The fourth watch we do in the midnight prayer. How many watches? Three. And that's usually the division from the time of midnight to the early morning. What time did they start rowing? It was mentioned, actually I changed the slide. Did anyone catch it? It was in the evening. The sun set, and that's why when they said they couldn't see anyone, because they were not going to row. You're not going to row in the middle of the night. You're going to go barely, it's the last time. That's why he made them get into the boat, so they could see where they're going, but by the time they got themselves ready, the sun had set. So they were going, literally they were going in circles. The Sea of Tiberias, although it's a very calm sea, when it gets tempestuous like this, that's why they were, it's very, is anyone to liken this? Has anyone been on a plane? Has anyone flown Egypt Air? A few years ago, I had this, actually several years ago, it was our first church trip to Egypt. So that's why it's very memorable. I've never taken to Luxor from Cairo. The flight was 3 or 4 hours delayed. I don't remember why. They never explained why. Even though everyone on the plane asked them. So we get on the plane, and it's a night flight, although it's supposed to be in the evening. And then halfway through, there's turbulence, but a very special type of turbulence that comes, and the lights go out, and the plane is, I mean, this is, most of the people, we were with one of the priests of last memory, and people were going to confess. Like, there was, and Abouna himself, we turned to Abouna, a little bit shaking, this is responsibility. This is the responsibility of the priesthood. So, I remember if you compare it to what the disciples were going through, this was very similar. We made it through, and then of course the pilot comes on, and it's very normal. Don't fly at night. Egypt there, in particular. So, what the disciples were going through was life or death. At least to them. It's not like just a cruise. It was a difficult journey. And so this challenge was important for them, that they would remember throughout their service and throughout their life. And in the midst of this is a call. But the challenge, as St. John Chrysostom tells us, that he's training his disciples. Most of what we see in the gospel, especially when he sends everyone away, that part is very important. He doesn't want them or care for them to be in training in the midst of the multitudes, right? Because it's very difficult. They're going to be the leaders of the church, and it's very challenging. And this challenge, it has to be at night, and it has to be pretty much alone. And that's where the glory comes. But there is a valley, and some people, they call it the fourth watch of the night, or some people can call it, in the darkness of the soul. There's many ways to describe this dark, difficult period. Some of you have passed. Some of you are entering. Some of you are in the middle. But we all have this, right? We all have this opportunity. And it will become, like we asked St. Peter, we'll get to it, it will become one of the brightest days in his life. But it has to come after this darkness. So this was all for their benefit, and the storm even itself was for their benefit. Christ's goal from this was to give them the yearning for him, to give them the reliance that they would never forget him. Because before, when you look at it, you're like, what's wrong with the disciples? They're with Christ 1 minute, he's doing the miracles, and then they're doubting, they're leaving, they're questioning. It's all the time. Even for St. Peter, this wasn't the first experience. But we forget. But this storm, I don't think they will forget. In their life, no matter how many years later on, they will remember this. That's why the pain and the darkness is part of the glory. It's part of the glory. Okay. So some of as the fathers, they say, that the storm is the difficulties, the temptations that we face. It's the up and down of life, the unpredictability of the waves that come our way. The best captain, the best pilot, cannot predict the extent of the turbulence. Sometimes they'll say, okay, you just put on your seatbelts, right? Because we're going through turbulence, and sometimes there's not really that much, and sometimes it hits you suddenly. So this is what the life, the journey is about. The spiritual darkness, the separation from Christ, all of this is essential for this challenge. We talked about the fourth watch. I'll just give you some of the meditations by St. Hilary, where he likens this is the journey, not just the individual journey, but the journey of the church through different phases. We said the first is the law, the second is the prophets, the third is the coming of Christ, and the fourth is his return. That's why he was going to pass. And it's the second coming of Christ. For our life, you can liken it again to the part that's right before the glory. So the promise is that when there's a storm in life, and there's always storms, but he is coming, and there's victory in his coming. It's a very, I forgot to mention it, but it's a very hopeful message. Although most of the story is in It starts in darkness when you read it. That's why the rest of the retreat, it's about the glorious and the victory that's coming with Christ. So we'll go through the next, actually it will be lecture 2. This doesn't really count. This is just an introduction. We'll have the characteristics of walking on water, because we know after this, St. Peter walks on water. The second lecture focuses on the other disciples, how to get out of the boat, because sometimes we're just watching. But how to be active, how to arise, what it takes for us to be mobile, not just sitting and watching life take its course. The third is the calling. And you'll notice when St. Peter he doesn't just jump into the water. He has the foresight to say, what? You call me, and I will go. And I will be sent. You say the word, because I live my life based on your word, and then I can step out. Although I have courage, but I need your word to bless this. And he knew that God wanted him, that Christ wanted him to do this. So it's a mutual calling. In the Old Testament, sometimes they would just wait for God to call, but this is a unique part. We'll talk in that third lecture about how to discern God's calling for us and the mission that He gave us when He created us, like with Jeremiah. And then finally, the victory in walking on water and how God takes us through the rest. In one of the other Gospels, and immediately it kind of skips that part, that they were at the shore where they were going. And the shore, of course, it's in the second coming. Our journey goes through to cross to the other side, to the heavenly place, and we meet Christ in the midst of our life. So we ask God to bless the rest of the retreat and to help us in our own journey, not just on this earth, but also on the waters. Glory be to God.
So we just want to actually take a moment to thank all the priests that have taken time out of their lives to join us this weekend. So if we can give all the priests a great thank you for having them here. So there's a couple of things that we forgot to announce. There's actually a hashtag for the weekend, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever you like, hashtag OneCopt. And also, right after we pray, we're going to have those who were asked